Boom! Welcome to Tokyo Tonight too. I'm Hiko Simon, and it is January 28th, 2018. Good to have you in here. And indeed, good to see you here in the comments. We got Andrea Morboy. Good to see you. And yes, hearing that it's very hot down there in Melbourne, and congrats on getting to join the Melbourne with the Australian Open final today. Just heard the news about the result of that. Thank you for that. We've also got Kang and Quotas. Good to see you. And yes, you made it early, but why not? Who else we got in here? We got Mr. Coincheck. Good to have you along here. Butter, indeed, more butter in the news. Actually, it's action-packed. There's a lot of subjects. I was kind of surprised. But we will get through them all. Maraligos, good to have you along. You haven't been on time in one of these forever. Well, you are tonight, and I am pretty much on time, which is also unusual, so we're all doing pretty well tonight. Yeah, the temperature here in Tokyo has been one of the news topics. It's been, we had like -4 earlier this week. We've had like high temperatures at 3 or 4 degrees. We had the biggest snow in like 3 or 4 years back on Monday, followed by a few days where it was just like -4. And yeah, I realize again that everywhere else in Japan is colder than Tokyo, but that was the coldest it's been in Tokyo for 48 years, and it's colder than I really care to be. So yes, while down in New Zealand they've had temperatures above 30 degrees, which is very unusual, and I read something that they're expecting even up to 40 degrees, which I've never heard of in New Zealand before. So record high temperatures in New Zealand. In Australia, high temperatures when I was there at Christmas, Sydney had like 48 degrees, which I can't even imagine. They even had 40 in Brisbane the other day, and as usual, up and down. I mean, in Melbourne, one day it's 40, the next day it's 20. It's all over the place. But very hot there. Here it's just been freezing cold. So yeah, the world is going crazy. What can we say? But while we are still here, we have live shows. Very fun and exciting to get back into the 2.5 Voyages with the original mission of featuring and supporting sort of up and coming smaller channels. I felt like I feel like the new rules, as I've said before, I'm optimistic that they'll bring back a bit of a sense of goal making, and hopefully with that goal making, people, I don't know, call me nostalgic, but I'm hoping that it'll bring back a bit of a sense of community and community support among creators, which I think is a good thing for coaching each other, supporting each other to get better as creators. And you know, Victor and I, we get a kick out of that. I mean, we're not, you know, I think Victor's gone pretty high as these things go, but none of us are really aiming to be like Charla or Rachel and Joan, or, you know, any of the big sort of global, you know, Megwins or anything like that. But we're very happy. It gives me satisfaction. I know it gives Victor. He talks about it all the time. What can we do to help, you know, deserving creators get up there and get up where they belong? You know, get discovered. And sure, you know, a lot of them in time will get discovered on, you know, we'll make it, but it's a lot of work, and it's always very satisfying to help people get on the road. I think that's what we're going to be doing, so we'll see how long we can keep it. We've agreed that we're going to do 2.5 VRGs as we have stuff, as we have guests, so we're not going to force it, because doing these 2 nights in a row is a little bit much, just given my lifestyle and everything, you know, having family at home and everything. But if we've got someone to feature or whatever, and the idea of going around and doing it on their channel, so we'll promote it on our channels, but you'll know where to come. So look at my Twitter, look at my YouTube, I'll upload a quick video, as will Victor. You'll know where to go, and you'll be able to subscribe and like the videos there, and plus it'll contribute to the view hours of those channels, which is something that I know people are freaking out about. That's interesting, the arrow thing, what's that? Oh, it's all refreshed. Oh, it's funny. Okay, the comment stuff is always doing new and weird things. So yeah, anyway, that's something I feel good about, the renewed sense of mission with 2.5 Voyages. And you know, please, if you know good channels that we should be, you know, good channels that are up and coming, particularly if they're below that monetization threshold, but you know, anyone who's sort of deserving as well, let's do this. I mean, I think this is a good driver for things like the Hanami. It's good for us. It was really fun getting onto Tokyo Breeze channel last night. Check out the video. It was a good video, and she's a very good video maker. You look at the videos on her channel, this wasn't just supporting anyone because they're small. She makes good videos, and you know, she does deserve a bigger audience. As you can see, she actually puts a lot more effort into it than I do, for example. So that was pretty cool, actually, and we're looking forward to keeping that going. We'll see how long it goes. We'll see if this thing picks up, as I hope it does. But that was pretty cool. Another thing, update on My Chan TV. Yeah, I mentioned last week that we suddenly things looked a little bit different to what I was expecting. We sat down, we had a big sort of scope discussion. We kind of cut a few of the bells and whistles out, which honestly I was okay with doing. I just want to get this thing sort of out. We sort of, we did everything. I got really cool with it. It's still awesome, and it's going to be coming out now. Before we were on a really compressed schedule, they got all the developers ready, but it was just, there was a bit of a misalignment of expectations. So they're going to have it ready for 2 weeks, but it was going to be much bigger. Whereas now, because those guys are all doing different sort of projects, some of the people who are helping, it's going to take until March, but they are going to reboot this week, and yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on it. But I'm still hopeful. I mean, like I say, I've had this thing working for like 5 or 6 months now, so it's just getting into the main build thing. The splicing, the graphic interface is all done. So I could even show you right now the site, and it looks freaking awesome. It's just it's not all connected on the back end, so it's not really working. And I want it to be at least working when I show it to you guys. So there will be updates to come, but I think it's kind of, as I've said before, this is going to be a tool where you're going to be able to track channels and watch all their stuff without having to go through all the labor that YouTube puts you through. So I think it's actually well timed. I want to get it out as soon as possible. It might come out before March 9, but I think that's what we're aiming for at the moment, is the beta date. So mark it in your calendars, March 9. That is now the confirmed beta date. We're all go. The latest one. We'll see if we can get it out sooner than that. So yes, so now that I refresh the comments and see that we have more people. Who else do we have in here? We have Mr. Coincheck, Andrew Moboya there, rocking the comments. We also have James O'Hara, good to see. What exactly is humidity? It's been raining here for 3 weeks now. It started going sideways. Well, that is 100% humidity if it's raining, apparently. Quid Ranked, good to see you indeed, and boom, you know what to say. So does Odie Jr. and so does Olivia D. Good morning, everybody indeed. Nissan R33 Tune, good to have you back. And yes, get those booms refreshed. That's what we do. We bring the boom. There are songs 47.8. Well, if you're going to 1 decimal, yeah, that's inaccurate. 48. You can call that 48. Surely, I'm not getting picked up on that. Albo Rosario, good to see you, sir. You've had the heater on non-stop for the last week, so have I. I've turned it off for the show because it would be hitting the mic and it would be sounding like I'm in a hurricane or something like that. As a result, I'm going to get progressively colder. I might have to wear my jacket partway through the show if it gets too much. But for now, the room is a toasty 23 degrees. If I turn this off, it goes down to like 15 pretty fast. It's pretty cold. So keep that on. Brasco Ferrian, I'm glad that you did make it. And hey, if you don't make it, watch it. I actually like it when people leave comments, like leave evidence during the week. I mean, it's great to have people on live. It's good to have you in the comments, of course, Brasco Ferrian, but feel free to watch it as an audio thing. Watch it during the week, just listen to it or whatever. I don't mind too much about it, but it's nice to have you here, of course, in the place to be. Hoshino, very good that you made it. Indeed, cold in Tokyo, but I hope you're keeping warm there, Mr. Hoshino. But good to have you along. Mr. Coincheck's got the ghosty thing. That's pretty cool. Got Robert Old Dude is in here. Oh, I missed that. There he is. Mr. Robert Old Dude is in there. Sergeant Bilkov is boom. He's got the boom icon. That's a good icon. I should make that like an icon for the title, indeed. Oh, yes. Good to have someone from Sweden here. I'm featuring, I realized nothing to do with Sweden. In fact, I know that I understand that the Finnish language is actually completely different to like Norwegian and Swedish, right? But to an untrained ear, there's a certain Scandinavian accent thing going on, which it's funny, I can hear in the Finnish embassy's video that they put out for the upcoming presidential election. The Tokyo, this is coming up. It's very, very cool. So I was thinking it's kind of cool to hear kind of a Scandinavian accented Japanese like battle anime thing. It was kind of cool today. It was a highlight of my day. But so good to have you in here. David Chabot, good to have you in here. Thanks for my awesome 60s videos and older. I don't understand what that's about. My awesome 60s videos. I'm not 60 yet. I will be soon. Hey, nothing's wrong with the 60s. But yes, probably that's referring to a different comment in there that I missed. But still good to have you in here, David. And who else we got here? Oh, Tico Sam. Yes, because I featured the live comments. Censorship here is basically pointless. But let's come back up for a minute. Who else we got in here? We got Andrea, Sergeant Bilko, Mr. Coincheck, Kay and Kodos, Andrea, my boy, Arbel, and here we go. You came here to, yes, well, I guess, why not there, Sam? Why not And how are you doing with that? on those two things, a score out of 10, with complete honesty, Tokyo Sam. TKO Sam, how are you doing on that? Melbourne is ridiculous. It is hot there. Lysander 45, good to have you in here. Wrong chat. Glad to see, what a relief. I didn't know what to say there for a minute. Go to the AC. Go to the AC. Are you talking about the air conditioning? Because I'm not going to turn it on. But yes, that probably means something else. But there we go. What do Adelaide is suffering through? Well, you know, Adelaide's Adelaide. Adelaide's a very nice place, actually. They actually have an accent a lot like New Zealand, which means that we all sort of like people from Adelaide. But it's hot. Australia should stop moving towards the equator. I've been telling them to stop doing that for a while now. Yes, indeed. Thank you, by the way. And remember, that's right. You can, if you say my name, it highlights in orange, which makes it stand out. So you'll get that. Finland is the only different language. Otherwise, all Scandinavians. Well, there we go. The Finnish people, they're like really super shy, though, right? I know I've seen a whole bunch of documentaries. They're very good rally drivers, but so are the Swedes. So I guess you have that in common. But the shyness thing is meant to be really unique with Finland. Yeah, I don't know. They're kind of interesting. I'm thinking all Finnish at the moment because they made such an awesome embassy video. So I will share that. Jelly Duck 100. There's a name that I don't recognize. So good to have you in here. What's the longest I've gone without sleep? If you are asking me that. I've gone 3 and a bit days working. I was working. I had heart palpitations. So my brush with I wouldn't say karoshi, but understanding how people work themselves to death. Yeah, I've been in that sort of situation in my very first job in Japan, at the cutover of my first project. I couldn't go home. I was into my 3rd day, and before I was allowed to go to a hotel to sleep for 5 hours, and I couldn't sleep because my heart was all over the place. Yeah, and that was really not fun. I mean, I think when I say 3.5 days, I was able to catch some naps sleeping on top of the desks at work, but I was on 24 hours, and it was horrible. So Andrew Mulboy, have I spent time checking my bank balance? I have not. Should I have? Are you talking about the Coincheck? Because I don't really do that sort of thing. I'm naturally a very cautious person, but I probably shouldn't I? I should check it every now and then. I'm actually not very good at things like that, but there we go. Hiko says, Tigo Sam, can you please chime in on the very important topic of the fact that winter has in fact come? It has come. I mentioned this just at the start of the video. Record cold in Tokyo. Of course, you know, Tokyo has the best winters outside of Okinawa anywhere in Japan. Sunny, dry, doesn't get that cold. It's actually much colder in Kyushu because they're facing like China and Siberia and shit. You know, and Tokyo is actually sheltered from all of it because we're surrounded by mountains on that side. So Tokyo has really wonderful cold but very dry. It doesn't even snow most years in Tokyo. But this year we've had proper snow and proper cold, and it's miserable. So yes, we've definitely had that alternating current. That is a good point. Melbourne has the best alternating current. I've heard of that. Air conditioning. Yes, it's air conditioning. You should definitely have that stuff. We didn't have that when I was a kid, living in Sorrento near Melbourne, and we had to basically just do nothing when it was during those very hot days down there. Finnish people have to learn Swedish, and apparently they hate it. Shy maybe a bit quiet at first. Well, there we go. 5 days without sleep. Who went 5 days without sleep? That's not fun. I've done 3, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. Tika Sam asks me, Hiko Simon, why is it Americans are better than everybody else? I just am having a hard time carrying this burden all the time, and I feel like asking an extremely popular man as yourself would help. I'm sure there's no sarcasm anywhere in that. So, why isn't the Americans? Well, you're just bigger. You just got more money. You're bigger. You're louder. You make awesome movies, and you've got the bomb. I mean, you know, that pretty much all those things sort of congeal that make America a top nation. That said, the burden. I mean, right now, you know, Americans elected somebody who is doing his damnedest to try to lift that burden from America. And this is what Britain did, by the way, as well. Every country gets tired of being top nation, and eventually they decide to just sort of trash the house that they're having the party in. And I don't know. To me, no matter how bad America gets, when you look at what the alternatives are, I mean, you know, the next 2 or 3 possibilities are horrible dictatorships. So I don't really like the idea of like, you know, being in a world that's led by the current sort of Chinese setup or anything like that. But we'll see where it goes. But yes, Americans are. The Americans are okay. They're okay, but I guess you get to be top nation. Just concerned about the crypto meltdown, normal accounts. No, it did not get through to normal accounts that I'm aware of, but that was a big one, and that is one of the topics tonight, so we will get into that. Lovely Kid Japan loves Tiko Sam, and Tiko Sam loves Lovely Kid Japan, hence the name Lovely Kid Japan. It's a consistent, it's a theme consistent name, and I respect that. I respect the consistency to title there. Sergeant Bilko, yes, they got a great protest. They did indeed. Well, you know, they're making America isolationist again, which America's done in the past. I mean, you know, they go through phases back and forth. Americans are good talkers too. I agree with that. When I was at university, I couldn't stand the New Zealand lecturers. They were boring. They were mumbly. They were like me. And the Americans were like entertaining and interesting. And you know, when you got to sit through hours of these guys talking, you know, to get through your degree, you prefer them to be interesting. And the Americans always were. I much preferred having American professors, and we had a lot in New Zealand. So yes, it's funny. I mean, Americans are basically loud before they even start talking. Just even their faces are more muscular. So when I used to work in a souvenir shop, it was funny. You could just tell from their faces that they were American sometimes, because they just looked like they're about to explode. You know, New Zealanders don't, and Scandinavians the least of all. It's kind of funny, you know, and you get this with different Asian countries as well. Even when the faces are similar, like the muscles are put together differently. Nikkei Japanese, the difference between Japanese and Nikkei Japanese, even if like they're pure Japanese, the faces are totally different. It's because Japanese have kind of, you know, they've got more muscles. I think they've got more stuff on their faces, which means that they look great, but they don't age so well. But Americans, you know, because they use so much more of their facial muscles than Japanese, they actually they hold on to it a lot longer than Japanese people actually. I think just holding all the muscles up on their face. It's really interesting. But I digress. A bit like Russians. Oh yeah, the Russians were kind of the thing when I was a kid. I think that's overhyped now, but yes, indeed. Hiko Simon, that really puts your mind at rest. Because countless nights of unrest. Yes, you could almost say it was unrested. Geesh. Give me a break, man. All right. Yes, very subtle there, Mr. Sam. Comments withheld. What do I think will be the next big nation? I think it'll be China. Well, we've talked about this before. China's been the next big nation since like 1500, since freaking Marco Polo, and it's never quite come around to that for various reasons. And frankly, it's not because of anything. Well, the West has done its fair bit to hold China back, but frankly, at the end of the day, China always does a pretty good job of holding itself back. I mean, even when China had the chance to go out and take over the world, they had ships that could go to America. They decided to stop doing that themselves. So I don't know, China's sort of the natural one that just through sheer weight and volume would do that, but they're not really a hegemonic country. They don't try to, you know, directly exercise power like European countries and America does. So I really don't know. I don't know. But in terms of, you know, having a world where bullies kind of get their way, I think that Russia and China could very well start exerting more influence, and that might not be so great. But there again, you know, I don't like the fact that some other countries like America are moving in that direction as well. And so who knows? Who knows? Trevor Tucker, by the way, good to have you in here. And yes, you got the big shout out last night. Victor mentioned you were at the Hanami party, and I saw you on Twitter today. So good to have you on the show and watching. Lovely Kid Japan also loves talking. Well, you're a lovely kid. That's why you love doing lots of things. That's very good. Subtle. So largest navy, all of that good stuff. China's trying to flex. Yeah, they're trying, but you know, it's complicated with China. They're trying to flex on what they consider from their perspective to be their stuff. Yeah, it's kind of bumping up against everybody else, but what can you do? It's kind of awkward being their neighbor, you know, but it's not like, you know, America sends people to, like, well, I guess Grenada is kind of the neighborhood, but they don't try to pretend that like Grenada is part of America. So anyway, let's get into it. I didn't realize that Malcolm X had an autobiography. I did like the Denzel Washington version movie of him, but there we go. Anyway, let's get into this. Stuff that I thought was cool that I tweeted about this week. The first thing was this. Oh, that's funny. This guy here has made a shirt for traveling covered in icons. In fact, a bit like this, except icons. So basically, if you have trouble with the local language, you can point, hey, photo, or money, or trip, or... Is there one there? Now that I see TK Sam in the comments, it's making me think maybe there aren't enough icons. But there again, he would probably draw them on a marker pen. Would it be possible to be arrested wearing a shirt just with icons for saying something? Who knows? Well, we could test all of those limits. But I think it's actually a very good idea for a shirt, just with 39 icons to cover all different sorts of communication. And if we load it, I mean, apart from the fact that's a very friendly looking chap. Here it is. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Awkward to show. Let's come on flipboard. Let's show the shirt. Boom, boom, boom. Can I zoom in on that? I cannot. But you get the idea. I think that's actually a really good idea for a shirt. I think that's pretty good for traveling. I would get one of those. I think that's an excellent. Like I say, maybe with Sam there would be like a whole extra row, but what could you do? Hey, internet blood sport. Boom. That's not. I don't really like do that very often. Consider that strike one. But yeah, you're heading on a very quick road out of the chat. So be careful there. That was very cool. That was something that I saw. Butter. Okay, now you know, internet blood sport has anger. I have anger. Butter. The government's just announced their forecast that they're going to be what are they going to be? They're going to be like 3,000 tons short of predicted production of butter this year. Again, the cows, the farmers that failed. There are not going to be enough. There's not going to be enough butter. And as a result, they are going to, the Ministry of Agriculture is going to import 13,000 tons of butter to keep as stock to feed to all of the butter suppliers to make up for expected supply shortfalls. Again, Japan is like the third biggest economy in the world. They trade with everybody, including lots of countries that make butter. We have butter shortages. They had rationing in supermarkets 2 years ago. Bakeries had to shut down during winter when there wasn't enough butter to go around. The TPP, the free trade deal, was held up for 6 months of Japan, you know, negotiating to continue to keep tariffs and block importation of butter in order to protect its own butter production industry, which cannot make enough butter for the country. And rather than solve the problem by allowing free imports of butter from Canada, from Chile, from Australia, from New Zealand, all of these butter producing countries that could just supply Japan with all the butter that it needs, looking after Japanese consumers, the Japanese government, to protect an industry that's completely abdicated its role and failed in its responsibility, negotiated to keep those tariffs, and they were out of the final TPP deal, which by the way was signed this week. That's great news, but butter was not included in the deal, or at least they were treated as a special category. And so what's going to happen is that the Ministry of Agriculture is going to continue to import and distribute and ration butter. You know, they're going to import it themselves rather than allow people to import it. This is basically the North Korean system of managing food. It's like, you know, North Korea imports rice, you know, when they're starving, when they have their own famines over there, because their own agricultural system has failed. Rather than allow a free market, you know, for food and importation and trade of food, the government there just asks for aid from South Korea and America and Japan that send rice over there, and the government doles it out to everybody, pretending it was really grown there. And it's exactly the same with butter in Japan. Just like the North Korean government, the government here purchases butter from overseas and doles it out to try to keep supply levels up. This is exactly like how Stalinism failed. This is how the Soviet Union starved to death and the economy collapsed. It's happening with butter in Japan right now. We've just signed, you know, like this massive free trade deal with like 4 massive butter producing countries, and Japan has just announced that while at the same time as blocking butter from being subject to free trade, they are going to import a whole lot of it. I mean, Lysander 45, this is no exaggeration. The economic policy around how agriculture, around how you know, butter is administered in Japan is exactly like the commissars under Stalin and Kim Jong-un managing food in North Korea, and neither of those systems work. You know, this is basically a communist dictatorship failed food management policy. And yes, Andrew, I understand that it's ridiculously expensive in Australia. It is in New Zealand as well, and if they allowed trade with Japan, it would become more expensive. But what you would have is everyone would have more expensive butter. The butter producers would have more money because they'd be getting the market rate for their food, and there would be no butter shortages. There would just be people paying the proper rate for it. In Japan, you know, the prices are fixed, but the supply is also managed by the government, and it's just a complete, you know, completely destroyed. Internet blood sport. So I'm saying that the Japanese government itself is importing butter to avoid the tariffs. Yes, that's right. Or they're going to allow, they're basically going to manage a quota of they've designated that 13,000 tons may be imported. I understand that that's going to be, that quota is going to be allocated among the main butter wholesalers. That's how I understand it works. And yeah, it's just old-fashioned, just, you know, stupid stuff. What about the shortage of eel? Prices going up? That's because Japanese ate it all. You know, they are now importing Taiwanese eel and Chinese eel and stuff like that. Prices are going up. And, you know, and frankly, they're eating them into extinction. So slightly different with it, but at least they don't have tariffs on importing. They don't have tariffs on importing eel, or at least not like special ones like they do with butter and rice. Rice, I understand. Rice is like a security issue for Japan. The last time Japan really ran out of rice, well, it was in the 1990s, but before that, the last time it ran out of rice was just before World War II, when Japan was subject to US sanctions. And, you know, they went and took it from China. Didn't work out well. So, you know, this is why China doesn't object when Japan says, hey, we want to make sure we manage our own rice supply. China says, yeah, you do that. Don't worry about us on that. You know, it's because, you know, no one wants Japan to run out of rice. But butter, you know, why they treat butter like that? Why they don't just make it, you know, subject to the global amount? So the importation amount is capped. That is capped. That is correct. It is capped. The price itself is not fixed, but it's more or less, you know, it's managed by like 3 or 4 big distributors, so it's de facto fixed. You know, the market here is rigged. You know, the farmers all run in co-ops, which are all connected with the ministry that also controls. I mean, the production quotas, the predicted supply for the next 12 months is all fixed. So prices and everything as well. You know, plus they also get crazy subsidies from the government on top of everything else that they get. So their income is guaranteed, even though they're failing to meet supply. Okay, but I just wanted to talk about that. Let's talk about Finnish people. There is apparently an election in Finland coming up. In fact, I think it's tomorrow or today. It might have been today. It must be tomorrow. Finland is having a presidential election. And so they made a video, the embassy in Tokyo made a video for all the Finnish people in Tokyo, but of course expecting that being in Japan, that probably all the Finnish people, being too shy to use Finnish, would probably have forgotten their own language and learned Japanese by now, but would speak Japanese with a distinctly Scandinavian accent. They made this video. For some reason I'm not jumping to pages the way that I like to at the moment, but they made this awesome video. If you go to their Twitter, can I go to their Twitter? The embassy Twitter page made this video, which is basically like an anime video, but with Finnish people speaking Japanese, and it's freaking awesome. Yeah, they've got like Finnish subtitles, but basically they're talking about how the forces, anti-democratic forces who want to spread ignorance and lack of care about Finnish politics. I mean, I watched this, I became alarmed that maybe my lack of interest in Finnish politics was due to that like red devilish looking person. So yeah, these Finnish people are basically fighting for you know, participation in Finnish democracy, and doing so speaking in Japanese with Finnish accents. It's quite cool. You know, I have no idea what, well, actually you can hear in Japanese, but it's kind of funny. The Japanese is kind of funny. These are the superheroes. They're Finnish superheroes, so they look kind of ordinary. You know, they wouldn't want to be too flashy or draw attention to themselves in public, but they're very, you know, hardworking, diligent people, and they are running for elected office. Support them. I mean, I wish I could. Sergeant Boko, yeah, I thought you'd appreciate it. So, you know, they are fighting with the forces of it. It's actually pretty well done. You should watch it. You should listen to it if you understand Japanese. They don't mess around, those Finnish voting electoral officials. Yeah, and it's actually big props to the Finnish embassy on that. I think that was pretty good. So let's talk about the Coincheck heist. I don't actually know exactly what happened here yet. Apparently in a 5-minute period on January 26th between midnight and 12:05, apparently, so what Coincheck is apparently it's a virtual currency wallet trading site where it's sponsored by a whole bunch of very, very big companies. I thought I saw in some of the footage Tokyo Marine, some of the big financial institutions have backed this 27-year-old run startup. A 27-year-old guy, CEO of this company. They set up this online, basically, trading and portfolio management system where you could trade how many different sorts of like Bitcoin and, you know, 20 other different things like Bitcoin. One particular type of these coins called NEM, apparently it's a Singapore originated cryptocurrency. Apparently somebody was able to do a trade which took out 580 oku, which is like, was it 58 billion yen, or 534 million yen of these NEM virtual currency in one trade in 5 minutes. I don't know who did it. It's not really clear how exactly it was done either, or how the security breach occurred. I mean, I thought the whole idea of blockchain was supposed to be, it was like unhackable or something, but there were, you know, whether this was actually stolen by the company or whether it was a real hacker or what the story is, I guess we're going to find out. But basically, this was apparently TV ads. The popular comedian Degawa, who's famous for doing sort of you know, those sort of Japanese game shows where he's like always being bullied by other people and he's always saying, "Oh no, this is gonna suck. This is gonna suck." He did the ad. He was the spokesperson, the face of this company, and apparently that wasn't a good choice in retrospect. Yeah, that drew the attention of Nietzsche. The company has promised that they'll be paying back 400 million of the losses to people out of their own capital. Apparently they have a shit ton of capital because a bunch of very big financial institutions back them, but they've only been up for like a year. So I guess we're going to find out more about this. This is different to Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox was an exchange, which was, the exchange itself was a sham. It was an Excel sheet run by one guy, you know, purely based on Bitcoin, and you know, the whole thing was sort of a scam, basically the way it was run from the beginning. You know, it was a person completely over his head. This is a properly, well, it appears to be a relatively properly run outfit, but there again, it was, the story is so far that it was hacked. And I guess between, you know, like Bitcoin going like this, and I mean, I find the idea of blockchain fascinating, not just as a cryptocurrency thing, but for all the other applications. As a lawyer, as a tool of contracting, I find it really, really interesting. It's a really exciting technology. I find cryptocurrency also very, very interesting. Wouldn't surprise me at all if we're all using some form of, you know, cryptocurrency, you know, or even if governments switch over to it, like within 5 to 10 years. Some countries apparently are already, Israel is one country, I think Estonia, some Baltic countries are already looking at it. So I can see, you know, the logical rationale for cryptocurrency, you know, making sense. I get it. But yeah, you know, at the moment it's extreme sort of Wild West, and this is it. On the one hand, you've got people saying don't go in and crush this thing by over-regulating it, but on the other hand, when you have things like this happen, you know, government's going to say, well, there should be rules to make sure that these companies at the very least have appropriate security, you know, and account management and business practices, which might, so on the one hand, you'd say if you put in too many expectations of like all these security requirements, it could crush like startups being, you know, set up by people who want to promote this, and which could get in the way and, you know, make it so that only big companies can do it, which would look like government sheltering big companies. But on the other hand, you know, if you're putting in meaningful rules, meaningful requirements to make sure, you know, that that data is stored and encrypted and protected appropriately, I'd say a case like this, you know, and there have been multiple cases like this now, where fundamentally it came down to the data being stored inappropriately and just not using appropriate security. Yeah, I think that, you know, that's where you got to regulate. You know, I'm not a pro-regulation guy, but it shouldn't be the way that it is at the moment. And I would say, unless you know for a fact, unless companies are very transparent about how they're storing your financial data, if you're going to give them money for storing stuff like this, because banks, you know, they need to keep a certain degree of network security for how they store your data. These cryptocurrency companies don't, you know, that's where the risk is right now. So it's interesting. You know, I think that can it be made secure? It can definitely be made secure. I work a little bit in this world. It can be made secure. There are banks that are going all net, all, you know, I mean, if you can put a bank, you know, on a server, if you can put bank account information on a server, you can put cryptocurrency portfolio tracking in the same thing, right? It's just that banks are held to standards that these startup companies are not. And you know, while it's cool to support startups, it's not cool when they lose people $580 million. So there you go. Good night, Andrea, not more boy. Have a good night there, and yeah, all the best dealing with the heat there. So I guess we're going to find out more about this. I'm kind of curious to see what happens, but Yeah, Bitcoin is definitely one of the cryptocurrencies. It's probably one of the most famous ones. So this is a different one called NEM, which I hadn't heard of, but apparently it is a pretty well doing one, and it's being traded a bit like FX at the moment. But obviously, there's a lot of risk with it, and it's worth remembering that, and it's worth being. It's just a reminder to just nothing wrong with cryptocurrency per se, but when you're handing your money over to these exchanges and traders that deal with this, make sure that they're trustworthy people, because most of the people I have seen involved shouting from the rooftops, buy my cryptocurrency or get into this, they're shady. There's a lot of shady characters in it, so just be super careful. This was some interesting news I saw today. Iowa, the brand Iowa is being brought back. Now, Iowa used to be a standalone company that made, it was a Japanese company that had Chinese manufactured cheap, kind of crappy but cheap and friendly, electronics. So if you were like a student or like me, just out of college in Japan, and you wanted to get a 20-inch TV, and you couldn't afford a Sony or a Philips or something, you would get an Iowa. You'd get an Iowa stereo, you'd get an Iowa TV. And they were kind of better than Chinese because they were like designed and managed by they were run by a Japanese company, but they were manufactured in China, and they were cheap and cheerful. Sony acquired these guys back in, when was it, like Showa 26. They established in Showa 26, which is 1951. How long has it been? So it's been more than 10 years anyway. I think it was 2004, 2005 anyway, when Sony acquired them and then wound up the brand. Basically, they combined Sony manufacturing with Iowa. I consider among the decline of Sony into mediocrity, which really happened from the late 90s through to 2010. The acquisition of Iowa and the merging of Iowa brand with Sony brand really was a big milestone for me. I was a cheap and friendly brand. Sony was a luxury, high quality brand. You would pay a premium just to get off Sony stuff. When Sony started using Iowa's manufacturing and putting Sony labels on them, a lot of people in Japan were ready to criticize Sony anyway. But visibly the quality of the goods dropped off, at least for a time. And to me, it was kind of maintaining the Iowa brand as a cheaper brand made sense to me, but combining it with Sony just looked to me like Sony trying to, stretch its margins by using cheaper manufacturing, which was probably what they were doing. So if you ask me, it's good to see. It's good to see this is coming back. Mar-a-Lagos, nothing on a server is 100% secure. Well, nothing on anything is 100% secure, but a server is the same as a hard disk. But the point is that it all comes down to how you architect it. How do you back up? How do you network isolate, and how do you encrypt? And if you do it properly, anyone can do it. I mean, all the different companies that offer infrastructure for this, you just have to know how to configure it and be willing to pay for it. Not cut corners on it. And that's why making sure that you architect your web infrastructure appropriately is something that I think should be made an obligation. And this is exactly why. We'll find out more of the facts about what these guys at Coincheck, how they were set up and how they were hacked. But it should not be that easy. We know in the case of Mt. Gox, this was a guy who was able to run the largest Bitcoin exchange in the world based on a laptop and an Excel sheet. That should not be allowed to happen. You shouldn't be allowed legally to run an operation like that. So yeah, that's not me. Believe me, it's not that I want to give the whole thing away to big companies. It's that, frankly, even small companies should be. That's a cost of doing business. That's an overhead, and it's not a blocker to entry. It means you've just got to know your security shit, and you shouldn't be allowed to handle $580 million of people's money unless you know how to architect a secure infrastructure, which may or may not be the case here. So this is what they have here, and these are the different cryptocurrencies, and people looking exactly at what happened. I'm trying to figure this out myself, so I guess we'll find out more about this, but it is really, really interesting. And yes, network infrastructure security is a little bit a part of stuff that I deal with. So yes, I'm very curious to find out what happened with this. The snow this week, we did have snow in Tokyo. That's a shot by Shoot Tokyo by Dave Powell, and that's what it was like. In fact, it got deeper than that. It got to about 23 centimeters in central Tokyo. So that was pretty cool. quit rank it. Instead, they will save their data in the cloud. Well, they probably were saving. Well, who knows? I mean, whether they used an internal server or a cloud server. But yeah. Getting companies to pay for the security is the problem. So coming back, sorry, yes, let's stay on this. Mary Logos, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, the multi-million-dollar credit card hacks is that companies will not pay to do the security themselves, which is why they're frankly better off using cloud infrastructure where the security is all there. But then you've got to still pay to use the features that are available and have the engineers that know how to do it. But history is already showing that banks, are terrible at doing IT, security themselves. That's why they all got hacked. That's why all the big banks in Japan got hacked and lost all their sort of data, and that's why they're all migrating onto external servers with better security. But putting them on there isn't enough. You got to know how to set them up. Yes, Tokyo was very, very pretty in the snow, and that was a very good photo. It was a blizzard. It's funny. It started snowing at like 2 o'clock, and I thought, okay, I've got like 4 hours more work. Let's go quickly. Hopefully I'll get away before it gets really heavy tonight. But when I came back 2 hours later, it was already building up, which is, it was pretty intense actually. It was a proper blizzard. And it was very pretty, and the snow is still out there right now. It hasn't really had much of a chance to melt. It's just kind of icy and horrible, but yes. So there we go, the prettiest snow, or the heaviest snow in 4 years. This is all comments, not photos, is it? Yeah, there was some train chaos. The train sort of stopped. Everyone tried going home at once, which meant that they had to close Shinjuku Station, and it got a bit chaotic. Fortunately, I was on a not so busy subway line to get out of there. Natalie Pate, good to see you. I don't recognize the name, but good to. In fact, you know what? I think I have seen your name before. So welcome in. I just spotted you, and I didn't say hello to you before, so I'm saying hello now. The snow sucks. Your neighbors threw a hissy fit and called the cops because you built a snowman in the middle of your street that nobody uses. My neighbor walking into my house. Well, you shouldn't make it in the middle of the street. You can make it on the side of the street. But still walking into your house and calling the police does sound a little bit extreme. I hesitate to ask, but what kind of snowman did you make? I'm sure there is more information to that story, but yes, indeed. But yes, the snow was indeed pretty intense. As you can see, they had to shut down Rainbow Bridge over Tokyo Bay. It got so steep that cars got stuck going up it, and so cars were stuck on there for like 5 hours or something. It was just crazy. And yes, Tokyo people don't drive on ice or snow. Wow, that collapse. Where is that? Oh my god, that's the Shinjuku Batting Center. That's like one of my sacred places in Tokyo. I love that place. It collapsed. The roof collapsed under the snow. That's crazy. I did not realize that. But still pretty nonetheless. It was a crazy Monday night, I think it was. And I'm very glad I got home early that day. A small thing. I've been using these for traveling, and they are really, really good for packing. These zip bag things. So I'd always use like plastic bags and stuff like that to separate, but these work really well. I've been using them on my last few overseas trips, and they are very good for packing and unpacking very quickly. So I just thought I'd share that. That saying that at -4 was the coldest day in 48 years, and for the first time in 33 years, there was an official cold weather warning for Tokyo. And indeed it was very, very cold. Tokyo is about to have ride-sharing taxis. We've never had them before, but they've just gotten a permission for some taxi companies to run a limited trial of Ainori. Ainori is also the name of a TV show where couples will travel the world in a van, or not couples, but singles will travel a van around the world looking for love with other people riding in the van. The show was all rigged, but it was actually very well done. Hey, Kurt Crawford, good to see you. So yes, the Ainori taxi, the idea of being able to share taxis, ride sharing, but being done by taxi companies rather than like Uber, is kicking off. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, and if it will mean cheaper taxis. I thought this was funny. This is FT, the Financial Times 404 page. Someone posted this, and why wasn't this page found? If you look this up and read it yourself, because it's fantastic. The 404 page. Why wasn't the page shown based on different theories of economics? Supply and demand. Demand increased and a shortage occurred. Mercantilism. This page is hosted by a foreign web server and is therefore banned to ensure the supremacy of our own software. Tragedy of the commons. Everyone wanted this page, but no one was willing to maintain it. I mean, it's brilliant. I really love this, so go and check that out. Difficulty of languages. There's all these theories about how difficult different languages are comparatively. And YubiKey, yeah, I got one of those. Those are they are basic shit, people, especially if you're dealing with accounts with $580 million in them. Keep that shit locked up. I mean, there's there's lots of ways to do it, and I do want to understand, if they were doing all of that, fine. But what I understand, the NEM, the owners of the cryptocurrency, when they did their own first report on this, which I'm going to go and read later on, they said that the security apparently was appalling. So they're kind of outraged. So the U.S. Foreign Service Institute language difficulty rankings. This is based on, for an English speaker learning foreign languages. Apparently, there we go. We've got Finnish being in category 4 there, but Scandinavian languages, other Scandinavian languages, Swedish and Norwegian, for example, being category 1. Apparently, it only takes us 24 weeks and 600 hours to become proficient in. So the easiest languages are Spanish, French, Scandinavian languages, Italian, as you can see from the map, and Romanian. Hey, and I can speak I can speak a little bit of Romanian. I've been to Romania. I can only do tourist Romanian, but that's fun. So there we go. That is included in there. The little bit of Hungarian brown there in the middle in Transylvania. But yes, you can see Japan there is right out there as the hardest. Takes more than 88 weeks, which is more than like 4 times the time it would take to learn Swedish, apparently. And there's an interesting Japanese article here looking at why Japanese is so difficult for English speakers, and of course, as we all know, it comes down to things like kanji and so on. So again, from my perspective, as someone who's lived here for 19 years, I've spent more than 88 weeks on this, I guess, and partly comes down to definition of fluency. Reading and writing fluency does take a long time. It definitely took me 88 weeks. It took me 2 or 3 years before I could really watch NHK News, for example, before I could read a news article like this comfortably. But that said, I could probably converse and function pretty well within a year. I think, as we've been through before, Japanese is a very simple language to speak. The sounds are very, very limited and simple. Grammatically, it's a very, very simple language as well. The main difficulties are that the base words of the language, the majority of them are unfamiliar to English. They're from root origins in Mongolia, China, Korea, and the Indo-Filipino languages, the Southeast Asian, sort of Yayoi origin sort of languages and so on. They're alien root languages to us. So even when words are borrowed words, they're often, although increasing katakana words, of course. And the use of tones, the use of politeness language, and kanji. All the stuff you can learn the verbal stuff situationally, I think, as well as any other language. But sure, kanji is a pain and it does take time. I think it is a logical language. The basic grammar and the single level Teinego language is very, very logical and simple. But of course, the politeness language, there is a system and a logic to it, but it's fluid and subjective. And so I'd say Keigo is very, very difficult even for Japanese people. And kanji is, of course, borrowed, and it's poorly borrowed. It's like the way that we borrowed French words into English, mistranslating them half the time and mixing them all up. Japanese did the same thing with Chinese. So yeah, I get how it's a challenging thing, but I wouldn't be put off by this. I'd say to get rolling and speaking, as a spoken language, it's fairly approachable. This is quite cool. Apparently an Australian train blogger page did this thing about different memes about different trains in Japan. And this is actually very clever. You would need some inside knowledge about probably these trains to get it. So it's very admirable that someone in Australia made this. But these are basically Tokyo trains and the sort of people that they are, the sort of personalities. So the Yamanote line, everyone's best friend, constantly too busy just to hang out, always in the loop of gossip. The Shinkansen, the bullet train, better than you and they know it, high achiever in school, probably has a LinkedIn, which is misspelt. The Chuo line, Yamanote's best friend, but secretly jealous of them, travels everywhere to help friends, lonely AF. There's basically the cute one of the group, the Narita Express, always Instagramming travel pics, low-key, wants to settle down, always in a rush. These are really, really good. This is very well done. So I quite enjoyed that. What else have we got? What else has been going on this week? There's been an article written on Ginza Hub, a blog, which I want to talk about. So I wonder if that's coming up. I guess it's coming soon. Oh, this was just good. Someone did like a mashup of Star Trek. You know, there's rumors that Quentin Tarantino wants to produce, or is being invited to produce a Star Trek movie, and he's a Star Trek fan. Someone's made a Pulp Fiction version of a trailer for Star Trek, and it's really, really, really good. They picked the clips for it very, very well. So look this up. I found this one on GeekWire. But what an R-rated Quentin Tarantino produced Star Trek would look like. This is very, very well done, and you should look that up. Now that the TPP was signed this week, which I'm all for, and I hate to put it this way, but I think we're better off without the Americans in this, right? The Americans had that terrible IP addendum, which they wanted to basically protect, you know, Disney and the U.S. media companies, which everyone hated and thought was the worst part of the TPP, and they dropped it when the Americans got out. And pretty much everything else, you know, car manufacturing, food, you know, beef imports, you know, agricultural stuff, manufactured stuff. All the other countries in the TPP, you know, at the moment, Japanese do like to buy American beef and pork, but, you know, Canada produces as much pork as America, and we have lots of beef from Australia here, so it just means that those are going to replace American products on the shelves. I mean, Trump, the US voted to become isolationist, and they're going to become isolationist, so and frankly as well, the Democrats, they negotiated, they made the TPP, and then when it came around to the election, they disowned it, and then people voted for the guy who they thought would be more honest about, you know, walking away from it. You know, Clinton said that she was going to, she disowned it, and she negotiated it. She should have tried to explain it a little bit better. I think it undermined her, and, you know, so the Americans are gone now. Now it's signed. I guess they thought it wouldn't go ahead without them, and it did, and I think it's a better treaty for it. And really, I don't want them back in it. As someone who lives within the zone and in Japan, you know, I think it's a better deal actually without the US. That said, of course, the US is a huge market. Everyone wants access, tariff-free access to the US, and the US wants, you know, to have markets to sell its stuff. But at the moment, you know, it's kind of chosen to go its own way, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, it's kind of funny. He's talking about renegotiating the TPP, and apparently the Japanese like trade reps who negotiated this for years with the Americans immediately said, "Homie, don't play that," right? Like, to get all 11 countries, I mean, it would have been 12 with America to agree. It took years and years, and you can't just start that again. Will be very interesting if China says that they want to join. And this is what happens to empires. They just get a little bit too big, and it becomes too much hassle, and they become sort of insular again. And I think, you know, America's going through that phase, but it's a big country. It can look after itself. Why don't Japanese study abroad? The cost and hassle survey shows. I want to get a smartwatch. I've been looking for a good smartwatch, but they're just not good enough yet. But I really like the circular sort of Samsung ones or the Android Wear ones, but I'm looking for something like that. You know what? The blog that I wanted to put up... Oh man, oh there it is, it's there. Man, there's still lots of stuff. Okay, let's go through it. Researchers have figured out a way to create true 3D holograms like in Star Wars. Like they're getting better at making these 3D holograms. I think that is awesome. Yeah, and I know with NAFTA it's exactly that. So, you know, exactly. That is awesome. Facebook is grabbing streaming rights for pro surfing. I understand that Amazon's looking at getting the Six Nations rugby. I do like that all the sport that I want to see is becoming more available on streaming, in global streaming, not on satellite TV. So I think that's a positive thing. I do actually quite like watching live surfing on Facebook every now and then, so that's pretty cool. Now the day after this big snowfall, there was a volcanic eruption on Mount Kusatsu Shiro. What was the name of it again? But in any case, this Mount Kusatsu, which has a ski field on it, on this mountain with a ski field that was active while skiers were on it, this volcano erupted. Apparently 12 people were injured, one person was killed. The person who was killed was a self-defense force member who was apparently, he was killed in the act of diving on his subordinate to blocks to protect him from a falling volcanic rock, which hit him instead and died. So a bit of a dramatic story there for the one guy who died, and you know, all the Nichan guys are like, whoa, they're going to make a movie about that. Yeah, but you know, imagine that you're on a ski field and all of a sudden it starts erupting. I used to ski in New Zealand. I used to live beside Mount Ruapehu, which is a very, very large volcano that is fairly active, and that's like where you do the skiing in the North Island of New Zealand. And yeah, that was always sort of a possibility there as well. There have been big disasters there, but of course in Japan, lots of excellent skiing, and this is in Gunma, not far from Tokyo. This volcano just erupted while people were skiing. Kind of sucks. And you know, terrible that these people got injured and this person died, but remarkable story anyway. Apparently he was a helicopter pilot, 49 years old, diving to protect someone else from getting hit by a rock, got killed. This is crazy. Ski on volcano, that's what, again, I mean, volcanoes make good mountains. Walmart has signed up with Seiyu. I think I said Seibu when I tweeted. It's actually Seiyu. They're owned by Walmart. They're a big supermarket chain in Japan. So by teaming up in Japan, that means that probably Rakuten's going to get into home grocery delivery. Which, yeah, we use Ito Yokoro here. I know that Amazon has been looking at rolling that out. A few other companies are already in that market. But yeah, I think that's interesting seeing Rakuten doing that. So that is there. China is banning rap music. Have you ever heard Chinese rap music? I've heard Taiwanese rap music. It's done well. I've seen it done well, and it was pretty good. Hey, don't you dare say that. Volcanoes make awesome mountains, Mr. Coincheck. I mean, I'm tempted to hide that that comment there because that is just unacceptable. Kohoshino, do I think Rakuten's strategy will be successful? I think it has a good chance. I mean, they've got a very strong. I mean, you know, it's a good site. It's reliable. It's got lots of users. If they can do the delivery well, I mean. Yeah, we use home delivery groceries, so if they have a good selection and they're reliable, I think they've got a very good chance. Coming back, mountains, I'm sorry, Mr. Coincheck was insulting mountains, volcanoes as mountains. Mount Fuji, come on, one of the most awesome mountains anywhere. We've got Mount Taranaki in New Zealand, looks just like it. Mount Ruapehu, we used to go on. You know, volcanoes are awesome mountains. Tai Nakamura, do I ever snowboard? I have snowboarded. I like to surf, even in winter actually, or when I haven't done either in a long time now. I didn't censor you. What are you talking about? It's still there. I didn't censor you. It's the auto censor. Here we go. I'm gonna make it sure I'm gonna censor that one. So yes, I have snowboarded. I like it, but there again, I did find I like this. I like to go up and down. You know, like. Yes, a mountain is cool. It's like a big wave that just never stops. That's kind of cool, but it gets kind of boring. I kind of like the excitement of trying to pick a wave and riding it, even if it's short and I fall over and I suck at it. But yes, I've snowboarded. I grew up skiing. You know, I mean, before snowboarding existed, I was learning to ski as a kid. I lived beside a mountain where you could go skiing. I'd just take 2 weeks off school in winter and go skiing, and it was fun. That said, I've done both. I like. You can control better when you ski, but yeah, I would definitely do. I would do snowboarding again. Tai Nakamura. Microsoft Mixer. So Mixer, for those of you who don't know, it's a bit like Twitch. So there are more of these game streaming. I think if you have an Xbox, it's basically the default streaming service. Twitch does that, of course, as well as YouTube. But actually, Microsoft Mixer, if you haven't seen it, it's actually got really, really good features. It's the latency is super low, the quality is high. I love the interface. I think it's just interesting, and I think it's always good for there to be other platforms coming up and being ready to compete against YouTube. And yeah, they're looking at ways to sort of incentivize gamers to come in onto their platform, so that's pretty interesting to follow. Last week, 1.1 million people in Japan registered as having influenza. So there's a massive influenza epidemic. Lots of people are having it. Be careful, take care of yourself. Please don't go to work if you have influenza, stay at home. I'll leave that there, but I don't know what you're talking about, Tiko Sam. It's a little bit strange. Well, that's an interesting one. The acting is a little bit rigid. When I used to watch Japanese dramas in New Zealand, I'd joke. At first I thought that the acting was bad, but then when I started paying attention to my Japanese friends speaking, I realized, oh my god, Japanese people just act like terrible. You know, natural Japanese people are basically like awkward, you know, like crappy actors. It's actually a lot like that. Well, it's what the whole country is like a terrible porn parody without the sex. I think that's a good description at times of the culture. Psycho 316. Good to see you here. Anyway, I just saw your name there, so I will say hello. And what else we got? I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Japan schools are in total denial over diversity. Yes and no. Well, so this is someone who's an ALT in 3 schools, and now she writes on Gaijin Pod. it's a you know, challenging title. She's basically talking about half and the treatment of half in Japan, and generally, as you would do, featuring it based on the more negative aspects of the cases of people who have had difficult experiences and stories that have been in the news, including a private school in Osaka that had a rule that all people have to have black hair. No people are allowed to dye their hair. So when someone there who was like quarter American had naturally brown hair, they forced her to dye her hair black, which caused you know, actual scalp damage and all sorts of other bullshit there. So and that was in Osaka, by the way, and Osaka has lots of these sort of racist institutions down there. So definitely there is bad stuff, and there is still legacy stuff everywhere. And people my age, my half friends who went to school in Japan, who I knew in New Zealand, often had negative experiences growing up, standing out and being kind of picked on as being half. Even people younger than me have awkward experiences, and everyone has a different experience, but what's really different about Tokyo right now is that there are so many foreigners here right now, and not just like people that look like me. Vast majority of Chinese and Koreans that you don't even know unless you recognize from their name or their parents. So having a half Japanese kid myself now, 8 years old, I've kind of been waiting for these issues to come up and thinking, how will I deal with this when this happens? What happens when I'll get the, you know, what am I discussion? And it hasn't happened, and he's gone quite a long way in. I would have expected it by now. I guess partly because he's in Tokyo, it's partly because he's in a great school. But that said, in his school we're not in an international neighborhood. It's not like Minato where like half the kids are foreign. We're not in Shinjuku either where half the kids are like Chinese. We're in a neighborhood, you know, relatively homogenous within Tokyo. There are a few foreigners compared to other areas, but that said, every class absolutely has probably 4 or 5. Every class of 35 kids has maybe 4 or 5 kids that have either a Korean or a Chinese parent, or you know, I think there's a Turkish, half Ukrainian, there's a half Turkish, there's some Chinese, Korean parents. There's no, I think everyone's like half, but you see the kids, and even when we raise up with my own son, the idea, sometimes my wife will say to him, "You're a New Zealander, you should eat more meat." He'll say, "No, I'm not." And he's quite comfortable actually saying it that way. And you see the identity thing, it's not to where I see it. And I'm just in one school in one very small world, and I'm probably in a very good place for all of this. It appears to me to be a lot more mellow. I believe me, I'm braced, I'm wound up, ready to jump in and, you know, do the whole third culture speech and everything, and standing up for my kids' rights and fighting the school and all this stuff, because you do hear these horror stories. And it hasn't been a thing, but what this blog talks about that is interesting here, the interactions of this foreign ALT with dealing with half students. One thing she mentions as a sign of the school's suppression of multiculturalism is the reluctance of half kids to like celebrate their identity and their strong, overwhelming desire to just fit in and not stand out. That's pretty universal. I mean, every country has that. In fact, especially second generation kids in every country. What I know from second generation kids in New Zealand and Australia is they pretty universally reject the country or the culture of their parents, you know, aggressively, and they try very hard to fit in. That's just teenagers. I mean, if you ask me, I think it's a different thing to, I mean, again, it makes it far more, you know, well, one, every school has different situations. 2, there are clearly schools that still have issues, very, very outdated views about multi-ethnicity and multiracial kids and so on. But that said, I'm sitting here and believe me, I'm watching very close, and I'm in a good position to jump in because I've been deep in Japanese culture. I help out with very occasionally, but I have done stuff with the PTA and so on. So I'm sort of around, I sort of have access, but what I'm finding is that everything is a lot more chill than I was expecting it to be. And frankly, where I see my son being uncomfortable with my culture, even then it's not really that he's uncomfortable with my culture, it's just that, you know, he is what he is. He's a kid who's been grown up all his life in Japan and has Japanese friends and classmates, and he doesn't think in terms, and neither do his classmates, you know, and I'm waiting for it to happen, but they don't think in terms of their ethnicity. Japan isn't a country that celebrates. I mean, again, in spite of the stereotypes, at least in Tokyo, it's not the kind of nationalistic country that celebrates its ethnicity. Korea does that. Some parts of Japan might do that. I heard that Japan used to do that quite a lot. But that culture's really sort of gone. It certainly isn't present in Tokyo. That's very liberal. Kids are just kids. They just want to fit in with each other. And yeah, you know, and to me, I can relate to that. I mean, I was always an outsider myself growing up. I was moving house every year. Even when I was in New Zealand, I was a majority Maori or part Maori sort of classes or whatever. I always thought it was cool to be sort of, I was always just trying to fit in with the kids I was with. So yeah, I'm kind of watching it. I feel like I'm generally an optimistic person, and I feel like things are getting better. Just the fact that you have all of these wonderful half people that are being so successful in Japanese society, and the fact that, I mean, right now in the Australian Open, the Japanese, there's a Japanese athlete there who is half African or African background, Japanese name, so I assume it must be the mum, who is Japanese. There are so many like high profile. I never, you know what, I think I've said cuz. I think I said cuz when I lived in Wairau, but I stopped saying it when I went back to very Caucasian Auckland. But yeah, anyway, I like the idea of how normalized now and how exposed people are to seeing multi-ethnic Japanese or people from multi-ethnic backgrounds. It's good that they have these sort of networks and support, and I want to make it known to my son that these things are there for him if he becomes interested in them. There is Kat McDowell, I just noticed that. So there you go, there are lots of awesome half role models and all that sort of stuff if people feel like they need it. But at the end of the day, if my son is quite comfortable in his own skin and being a Japanese person, in the same way, I mean, I don't... Obviously, being a white, bald, middle-aged guy, it's easy for me to say that I'm comfortable in my ethnicity because I've got like the most privileged, easygoing ethnicity I think that you could have. But that said, yeah, I like and respect the fact that my son is more concerned with his identity as an individual than he is with the identity of his ethnicity. Now, not everyone's always going to see it like that. Sooner or later, this will come up in one way or another, and I guess that'll be one aspect of his identity. Perhaps when he gets more into his teenage years, that he'll probably figure out whether he wants to embrace or reject, or how he's going to deal with it. But for now, I think the conclusion that you spend your teenage and your 20s trying to figure out how to define yourself and assert yourself to the world. I've found, like, since I became 30 and after 30, you kind of go back to not giving a shit and realizing it comes down really just to the individual. So the conclusion is that I have now is that where my son is at right now as an 8-year-old, just being cool with who he is and who his friends are, and not giving a shit about backgrounds, is actually the correct conclusion. But you go through a very long period of about 20 years in your life between about 13 and 33 where you really get hung up on that shit. So yeah, it's interesting as a dad watching this. It's interesting thinking about it, but I've been waiting to jump in, and there's been nothing to jump in for so far. So there we go. And a plug for Kat, indeed. Kat McDowell, she is awesome. I got a new album over here, actually. She sent over, it was very, very nice. Got stickers, I got all this cool stuff. She's doing awesome stuff. I think she's coming back to Japan this year for a tour, so that will be awesome. So I did want to talk about that. It's been interesting for me as well, just as someone very interested in, as a first generation migrant, having a second generation half locally born kid. It's interesting to watch. Does my kid speak English? No, he doesn't, not really. I prompt him, he parrots my English. I speak English now to him. I try to do it consistently. It's hard to keep up though, because he only speaks Japanese back. So I think this is all part of where his only room for his identity really is as Japanese. But that said, that doesn't seem to be presenting him problems. That is Coincheck. This is really cool. I'm thinking about getting this. The new DJI Osmo is like $130, and apparently it's a pretty solid mobile phone gimbal, so I'm thinking of getting that. Good reviews. And Abe is going to be an Abe administration official quits. Helicopters have been crashing everywhere in Okinawa lately. No one's died. But there have been lots of crashes, and the local government there has been complaining to the national government to get the Americans into line because their stuff is crashing everywhere. And apparently somebody telling them to shut up from the back benches, a vice minister said, well, it's not like anyone's died, have they? I.e., don't complain unless someone dies, which he was forced to resign about. There's now an AI app which can put faces of celebrities onto porn. I guess we've been waiting for this for a while now. It's here. I guess as a YouTubers are pretty much screwed, aren't we? I mean, there's a lot. We put a lot of video material up there, but you know, there again, I think we already pretty much are in an age that it'll be pretty easy to dismiss this stuff as kind of junk when it's done. But there we go. Record number of foreigners now working in Japan. Oh yeah, Hiromu Nonaka, the old Secretary General of the LDP, has died. He's an interesting character because he was Secretary General of the most right-wing conservative nationalist party in Japan. But he was from a Buraku background. He was pro-North Korea, pro-North Korean citizens and North Korea itself. And he was a Secretary General of the LDP. He was like an extreme, like left-wing militant sort of from his politics and his philosophy and positions. And yet he was extremely powerful within the right-wing government in Japan, which was interesting. That's a pretty good one, Psycho 316. I agree. I would also like to see Scarface with Well, but I don't know. I feel like we've seen enough of Nicolas Cage. I'd like to. Surely we could do it more interesting than that. But yes, and the final one, Google's Clips AI camera. So you just put this on, and it will just take good photos. I'm interested to see how that works, but $250, I don't know. And it's a little bit creepy, but I'm curious to see how it would work. It would be good for something like the Hanami, which will be on April 7th. Be there or be square. Be there and be square. Because, yeah, it's always hard to remember to take photos. So that might be interesting for that sort of thing. I'm kind of curious to check it out. That is the show. It's wow, it's been 1 hour 10 minutes. I'm going to do an outro just because I always do an outro, but thank you for joining me. Been a lot to talk about tonight. And oh yeah, the 2.5 Voyages last night, which I talked about before with Tokyo Brew, which went very well. So I am going to plug in and do an outro track, and that'll be the show. Boom. So let's get into here. Hope you have a good one. Remember to like if you liked. I'll be back here next week. Check out the tweets and Facebook and everything. I'll also put a video up here for the next 2.5 Voyages where we will be supporting small channels, trying to get up to that view hours and whatnot, and to get the proper attention. And yeah, hope you all have a very good week. I hope it gets warmer, but apparently it's going to snow again on Thursday in Tokyo, so get ready for that. And yeah, so let me... What should we do here? Let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to go and do the outro. Glad you enjoyed. Please, if you enjoyed, like, come back again next week. Remember, follow me on Facebook and Twitter. You can message me anytime on that stuff. It's all open and unlocked. Have a great week. See you next time, and here's the outro. This one I'm going to do Twitch. This is kind of fun. I've got to record some of these into tracks. I haven't been able to do it lately. Here we go. show. That's the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. See you again next week. Boom. Peace. Have a good one. See ya.